Howdy's gamers, this is Game Sergeant Scurry, here to give you guys my thoughts on the ARMS Global Test Punch. Before we begin, I just want to let you all know that this video will be focused mainly on the experience of the Test Punch itself rather than the characters and arms. That particular subject will be talked about much more in detail in another video after this weekend's Global Test Punch, where I'll dive deeper in how each character and the arms all work. But today, we'll just talk about the core gameplay, among other things. First, let's talk about the presentation of the Test Punch itself, as it's most likely much different than how the final game will be, much like how Splatoon's global test fires were. From what we saw in Nintendo's ARMS Direct a couple weeks ago, it actually looks like we got more of a demo than we did in any of Splatoon's test fire demos. The reason I say that is that in both of Splatoon's test fires, when you open up the demos, you're given a still image of the game. Then when the test fires start, you go through a tutorial, then to a weapon select screen, and then you're just thrown into a random lobby to wait for a possible match. When the match is over, you either have to exit the lobby after the match ends to change your weapon or settings, or you're just stuck in another waiting lobby for the next match. For both Splatoon and Splatoon 2's test fire demos, it really didn't represent how the final game would work. Now granted, we still don't know how the final game of Splatoon 2 will work either, but I think I can safely assume that it'll be vastly different than how its test fire worked. Now, in contrast to how both Splatoon's test fires were, at least from what we saw in the Nintendo Directs we were shown about ARMS, the demo looked like just a watered-down version of the final game. When you first open the demo, you're given a splash screen where you select a character. Once you've selected, you're thrown into a short tutorial. After the tutorial, they give you a practice match against an AI-controlled opponent. This is where you'll first be able to select your ARMS combinations. The match is a best 2 out of 3, and once it's over, you're actually put into the main game menu. This is how the ARMS Global Test Punch is closer to how the final game will work than Splatoon's Global Test Fires were. They put you in the actual game's menu. Of course, your only options are to join a party match and to look at the help and tips guides, but based on what we saw in the directs, this is the whole menu, but just a watered down version. Now, a really nice thing they included in the demo was the ability to include 2 players per system. The game does support split-screen online play after all, and it's awesome that they gave players that option in the demo, considering that Nintendo themselves said that each online lobby could hold up to 10 Switch systems per lobby and up to 2 players per system, allowing for up to 20-player lobbies. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a 2-player session, just because I only have one set of Joy-Cons, and I don't want to give the second player the inferior experience. Also, I don't have any local friends. Anyway, back to the game. Once you click on Party Match and choose your character, you're almost instantly put into a lobby. The amount of time you wait will most likely vary depending on your connection, but it's not that bad, especially since they allow you to warm up while waiting to connect and between matches. This allows you to try out your character and your arms against dummies in a sort of multi-man smash style mode where you try to attack moving targets shaped like one of the characters. This is an excellent option to add to the online features. This is what I wish they did in Splatoon, or at least Splatoon 2. I know the first Splatoon had those 8-bit style minigames that you played on the Wii U gamepad, but those got old after a while. This warm-up mode is more akin to Super Smash Bros. Lobbies, and I wish that more fighting games, or just online games in general, had a waiting system like this. So moving on, when you're not in a warm-up session and you're still waiting for a match, you're in a lobby. Now let's talk about the lobby itself. I really like this interface. It shows you pretty much everything going on between each player in the lobby, except for the matches themselves. The interface shows you how many players there are, it shows you if there's a 2-player system, it shows what characters and what color of each character players choose, it shows what mode everyone's playing, and who's against who, how much HP each player has in a match, when a player is in rage mode, and even how much time is left in a match. Also, to add a nice competitive touch to each lobby, they gave each player, or pair of players, a counter to show how many points everyone's earned since they joined the lobby. Each player is awarded 3 points for winning a match, 1 for losing, and 2 if the match ends in a draw. Not only that, but the game also tells you how many matches you've played in a row every few matches. This lobby also allows you to change your character in between matches, Splatoon. Yes, who would have thought that would be such an easy and convenient thing to put in the game? But it's possible. Look, here it is. But wait, there's more. As just another little funny touch to the interface, if you tap the L, R, and A buttons while waiting in the lobby, your character icon does a little animation and expression. It really doesn't affect the game in any way, but it's just another neat little thing they added to make the interface that much more interactive. Overall, I gotta say that this interface was the most surprising thing about the game, and probably one of the best interfaces ever made, I might add. It's both utilitarian and nice to look at, and I applaud Nintendo for pulling this off. I just hope that the same amount of effort they put into this lobby interface is also put into Splatoon 2 as well. Now on with the gameplay, starting with the different modes we were given. There were technically only 2 different gameplay modes that we were able to play, those including the standard fight and the V-Ball modes. Even though there were technically only 2 modes, there were actually many different ways these modes were played. In fight mode, you're put up against 1 to 3 other players in a free-for-all, or there's a chance you'll be put in a 2-on-2 match. Either way, each match type feels almost completely different with each added player. In a 1-on-1 match, you can focus just on that one other player. These matches are probably the most competitive and technical ones and require the most thought into the arm selection. You add another player in the mix for a 3-player free-for-all, and it's an entirely different game. In free-for-alls, your focus is best on avoiding getting hit. You gotta constantly change your target, otherwise you'll end up with a player sneaking an attack from behind you. And don't even get me started on 4-player free-for-alls. These matches can end really quickly, since everyone's constantly being hit to the point where once it's down to just 2 players, 1 or 2 more hits, or a grab, usually ends the match. But let's not forget the 2-on-2 matches. This mode is different, in that each team is tethered together by a string, and so if one player gets sent flying across the map, their teammate does too. Team attack is also on, so you don't want to be behind your teammate when you're throwing punches. These matches are also made so that a 2-player system will always be on the same team. Aside from the standard fight mode, we were given the V-Ball game as well. Now, I will admit that every time this mode came up, because each mode and stage is assigned at random, I didn't really care much for it. After all, ARMS is first and foremost a fighting game. But once I started playing the mode, I found myself getting into it just as much as the 1-on-1 matches. This mode is actually good practice for movement, as it definitely requires you to be as close to the ball as you can. Usually, your punches take a while to travel a far distance, so being far away will give you a greater risk of losing the ball, so you'll want to close the gap, which requires good movement. I think this mode will be especially helpful for the heavier characters since they're slower but can still benefit from learning the technicalities of movement, which in this game is almost as important, if not more important than the arms themselves. This mode can also be played 2-on-2. Teammates aren't tethered together like in Fight, but I believe it adds to the competitiveness of this mode. I think that just like it helps with movement in 1-on-1 matches, a 2-on-2 V-Ball game can be helpful for 2-on-2 fight matches in the same way. Both of these modes were fun in their own ways, and I'm excited to see what lies in store for the others when the game comes out in June. But now, let's talk about the other aspect of the gameplay, controls. So, I played the game with the Joy-Cons in the thumbs-up grip and with the Pro Controller. I wasn't able to play the game in handheld mode, tabletop mode, or with the single Joy-Cons. I'll try those modes in next weekend's Test Punch though, so I can thoroughly analyze what controls feel the best. So, just from my experience with the 2 control schemes I tried out, the motion controls are the way to go. The Pro Controller does have a couple things going for it, but the thumbs-up controls give you the versatility that you can't replicate with the controller. So the main and really the only thing that the Pro Controller has going for it is the left analog stick. With the motion controls, it requires a lot more physical movement to go where you need to go, but with the analog stick, all you need is your thumb. One example of this was when I was in a match with the character Ninjara. His main gimmick is that he can warp a short distance when you hit the dodge button or while guarding. Sometimes that warp can become pretty predictable, especially when going a long distance in a single direction. So sometimes you might want to fake out your opponent by dodging in the opposite direction so you don't get hit by a read. The quickness of the analog stick does trump the overly accurate motion controls in that respect, but I only see it important with Ninjara because of his vanish move. One thing you can't really do with the Pro Controller, however, is aim your punches. Or you can, but it requires the left analog stick, and so it sacrifices your movement for the ability to aim. With the thumbs up controls, you can do both at the same time, and depending on the arms you equip, you can really angle the punches drastically with the motion controls. The good thing about the motion controls is that, even though they're actually very accurate, they don't require too much movement at all. That's not to say that by the end of a hot match, you won't end up exaggerating your punches in the heat of a moment, but a cool, calm, and collected player won't break a sweat with these motion controls. Now, one thing I was skeptical about with the motion controls was the triggers being the main action buttons. I thought they would feel kind of janky and weird, but honestly, after that tutorial, it almost instantly sank into my mind how they worked, and I didn't find it difficult at all. It did take me a while to figure out how to change the targets with the Joy-Cons in the free-for-all and team matches, but once I figured it out, it kind of made sense. I will say though that because of the small size of the buttons and the fact that I believe all the face buttons change your targets, I'd sometimes accidentally change back to the same target. But it's a learning curve I'm sure I'll probably get used to. Now, the game encourages you to attach the straps to the Joy-Cons. If you started out playing that way, you may not have a problem, but if you started without them, then I'd suggest not putting them on. I personally started without them, so when I tried putting them on, they felt a bit weird and made pressing some of the buttons a bit difficult. One thing I do believe you should attach though is any kind of grip accessory. While I do think that the naked Joy-Cons are just fine on their own, adding some extra bulk may make them feel easier to hold. A good set of grips I'd recommend are the PDP Joy-Con Armor Guards. They add just enough bulk to get a good grip on, but they're also evenly crafted on top and bottom so they don't feel weird while holding them in the thumbs up grip, like some of the silicone ones do, and they don't cover the face buttons. Plus, they give you 2 sets with 2 analog stick covers per set, and they come in multiple colors, usually one black set and one other color set like yellow, red, or blue. I've also seen a 2 black set one as well. But enough of my shameless promoting of the PDP products. Long story short, I think that if you plan on getting any good at this game, you'll want to use the motion controls. It's pretty much the same as Splatoon. All the players you see on top in esport competitions or at S+ rank are probably using the motion controls. And the ones that aren't were carried there. Like I said before, I'm not going to talk much about the characters in this video, but I will say that I think every character has a pretty equal amount of strengths and weaknesses. It's just that some of those weaknesses are a bit heavier than others. See what I did there? And we'll get into that in the next video. I did try out each character at least 3 times, and I liked pretty much all of them except for Helix. I know he's probably going to be a really technical and difficult character to face, but to me, there's just something about his design that shies me away from him. On the flip side, I'm almost certain that my 2 mains are going to end up being Ninjara and Mechanica. Well, there's no question that I was going to main Ninjara from the second I saw him. I always loved the ninja, shadowy, sneaky characters in fighting games, with the exception of Robin in Smash Bros. But I just love his warp ability. I think it's versatile enough to make him a mid to high tier character, but not too overpowered to be considered broken. Now, what I like about Mechanica is that even though she's a heavyweight with high HP and rarely flinches, she's surprisingly agile. Her ability to hover and dodge for a pretty sizable distance makes me think that she could be in the mid-tier range at least. I won't even talk about the arms themselves in this video, because then this video would be like an hour long. So let's go ahead and move on to my impressions on the atmosphere of the game. Specifically, the visuals and music. I already mentioned how I appreciated the nice presentation and style of the lobby interface, and I even like just the choice of colors for the entire game, really. Everything's so vibrant and really pops out, which is to be expected from a Nintendo game. But that doesn't come at the expense of nice graphics. Even for the Nintendo Switch's lack of power in comparison to its direct competition, you still get to see some gorgeous and nicely detailed visuals because of the style they went for. A lot of people compare this game's visual style to Overwatch, and I agree. Even as someone who doesn't really play Overwatch, that first trailer from the Switch event in January just screamed Overwatch to me, which isn't a bad thing. If anything, we need more colorful, stylistic games like Overwatch, Splatoon, and ARMS to dilute the oversaturation of realistic rocks and grayish-brown color palettes that most games in Nintendo's competition try to do. I'd honestly love for Microsoft to add just one colorful, stylistic first-party game into its IP library, just to gain an ounce of my trust again. But anyway, even though I love the art style and graphic fidelity, there is one minor graphic flaw, and it's kind of the same problem I had with Pokken Tournament on the Wii U. It's not that bad, but it's still noticeable. Basically, the developers put almost every ounce of their creativity into making the characters and stages look as beautiful as humanly possible with both Pokken and ARMS. But that overdose of detail came at the expense of giving the backgrounds of the stages, specifically the crowds and other moving objects outside of the arena, little to no detail whatsoever, which was especially distracting in Pokken because it was just so bad. It's not as bad in ARMS, but it's still something you'll want to try to ignore. On a more positive note though, the game runs at a silky smooth 60 frames per second, and let me tell you, it's a beautiful sight. I hadn't really appreciated 60 FPS until I first played Splatoon and saw that frame drop in Inkopolis, but now I'm really critical and notice it immediately when I see it. Finally, I'll talk about the music. Since this is only a demo, we only got to hear a small fraction of the soundtrack, but for the most part it's pretty good so far. I'll probably have that main theme stuck in my head for months after they remixed it with the lady singing. I also like how almost every stage includes small snippets of the main theme in their respective songs, but in a tone that matches the setting of the stage. It's a very Nintendo thing to do, and it works really well. So that's the extent of my thoughts on the ARMS Global Test Punch. I really loved it, and I almost think I got more enjoyment out of this test punch than I did of Splatoon's Global Test Fire. I still think that I'll enjoy Splatoon 2's final game more in the end, but ARMS really does look like it's going to deliver on its promise of being a new hit competitive fighting game. And even if what you see now doesn't catch your eye, the game's going to get free updates just like Splatoon with new stages, characters, and ARMS. So I think this IP has a long future ahead of it. That's all for today, guys. Next week, we'll cover each of the characters and their signature arms individually once I get more time to try out each character in this weekend's Test Punch. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like what you see here and you'd like to see more scripted videos like this in the future, then send me a salute, leave a comment, and tell me what you guys thought of the Test Punch. Who's your favorite character or an arms combination and why? What did you or didn't you like about the demo? I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say. Oh, and subscribe while you're at it. So take care and carry on.